"60 years ago, this place had almost nothing. No oil, no farmland, no army worth the name. It was so short of fresh water that it had to pipe in its own drinking supply from a neighbor, the same neighbor that had just thrown it out. Most experts at the time quietly expected it to fail. Today, that same speck of an island is one of the richest places on the entire planet, and its people now earn more, on average, than the citizens of the country that expelled them. So, how does a nation with no resources and barely any land go from poor to spectacularly rich in a single human lifetime? To understand it, you have to start in 1965. In 1965, Singapore did not celebrate its independence. It was forced into it. After a brief and bitter union with Malaysia, the larger country simply voted Singapore out. And on the day it happened, Singapore's Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew went on TV and broke down in tears. What he was left to run was almost comically fragile. A single overcrowded city of about 2 million people, with no farmland to feed them, no resources to sell, and very little industry to employ them. Roughly 1 worker in 10 had no job at all. Deadly riots had broken out only a year earlier. On paper, this was not a country with a bright future. It was a port city with a long list of problems and no obvious way to solve any of them. And here is what that fragility looked like in cold, hard numbers. In 1965, the average Singaporean produced only around $500 of income for the entire year. That is genuinely poor, closer to parts of Africa at the time than to Britain or the United States. The whole economy was worth less than $1 billion. This is our starting line. Hold on to this number, because where it ends up is genuinely hard to believe. So what do you do with a hopeless little port? Singapore's answer broke almost every rule in the development handbook. Back then, the fashionable advice for poor countries was to keep foreigners out, build a wall of tariffs, and make all your own goods at home. Singapore did the exact opposite. It went out and courted the world's biggest multinational corporations, practically begging them to come and build their factories on the island. To pull it off, the government created a single agency, the Economic Development Board, whose entire job was to sell Singapore to foreign investors. It offered them tax holidays, cheap ready-built land, a disciplined workforce, and a promise that the rules would stay stable for years. This is foreign direct investment, letting outside companies build and own the factories, and it was an enormous gamble. If the corporation stayed away, there was no plan B. And to almost everyone's surprise, the corporations came. Singapore drained a mosquito-ridden mangrove swamp on its western edge, a place called Jurong, and turned it into a sprawling industrial estate, paved and wired and waiting for tenants. Through the late 60s and into the 70s, foreign firms flooded in to assemble radios, stitch garments, and wire up early electronics. The empty factory shells filled with workers. Unemployment, the problem that had haunted the island since independence, began to melt away. For the first time, ordinary families had steady wages and a paycheck they could actually count on. And the overall economy started expanding at a pace the wealthy world could only envy, frequently close to 10% every single year. But cheap factory work is a trap. The moment your workers start earning a little more, the factories pack up and chase even cheaper labor somewhere else, and a country built on them can collapse. Singapore saw that trap coming and did something genuinely unusual. Roughly every decade, it deliberately walked away from its current source of income and climbed toward a harder, higher-paying one. From simple assembly to skilled manufacturing to advanced electronics and chemicals, and eventually to finance and research. It kept reinventing its own economy on purpose, again and again. And you can watch that climb happen decade by decade. In the 1970s, Singapore pushed from simple goods into heavier industry and became one of the largest oil refining centers on the planet, despite never pumping a single drop of oil itself. In the 1980s, as wages rose, it leaned hard into electronics, becoming a major manufacturer of the disk drives inside the world's new personal computers. Each time the work grew more skilled, the pay grew higher, and the country grew richer. The government nudged this along relentlessly, at one point even raising wages on purpose to force companies to either upgrade their operations or leave. It was running an entire nation like a single, very ambitious company. Underneath all of this sat one advantage Singapore did not have to build: its location. The island sits right on the Strait of Malacca, the narrow ocean corridor that a huge share of the world's ships must pass through to move between Asia and the West. Singapore took that lucky position and squeezed everything out of it. It dredged a deep harbor, ran the docks 24 hours a day, and obsessed over speed and efficiency. Today, its port handles roughly 39 million containers a year and is the busiest transshipment hub on Earth, the great crossroads where the world's cargo is lifted off one ship and loaded onto another. Geography handed it the address. Singapore built the empire on top of it. Still, ports and factories alone do not make a whole population rich. The quieter engine was the way the country was actually governed. Singapore built public housing on a scale that almost no other nation has ever matched. Today, around 8 in 10 Singaporeans live in government-built apartments, and most of them own the flat they live in. It also forced every worker to set aside a large slice of every paycheck into a national account for their own retirement, housing, and healthcare. And it went after corruption with an almost obsessive intensity, in a part of the world where quietly paying bribes was simply how things got done. None of this is glamorous. Nobody makes documentaries about excellent public housing. But clean, boring, reliable administration turned out to be one of the most valuable things the country ever owned. And every part of this rested on one final decision: to bet everything on people. With nothing to dig out of the ground, Singapore concluded that its only real resource was the minds of its own citizens, and it invested in them relentlessly. World-class schools, technical training institutes, generous funding for universities, and constant retraining to ready workers for the next industry before it had even arrived. So when the cheap assembly jobs inevitably drifted away to poorer countries, as they always do, Singapore did not fall apart. Its workforce had already climbed to designing microchips, refining chemicals, and managing global money. The people kept leveling up, always staying one step ahead of the wave. By the early 2000s, Singapore had transformed into something its 1965 self could never have dreamed of: a global financial center, spoken of in the same breath as London, New York, and Hong Kong. It had also become extraordinarily good at saving and investing on behalf of the entire nation. The state's main investment company, Temasek, today manages a portfolio worth somewhere around $300 billion. A second national fund, called GIC, is believed to manage even more, though. Revealingly, it has never publicly disclosed exactly how large it is. A poor, water-starved port had quietly remade itself into one of the largest pools of investable wealth on the planet. So let's put the two ends of this story right next to each other. In 1965, the average Singaporean earned about $500 in a year. By 2023, that same figure had climbed to over 85,000. And before anyone says that is just inflation, it is not. Even after you strip rising prices completely out of the picture, Singapore's economy grew at roughly 9% a year for decades on end. One of the fastest sustained sprints in all of recorded economic history. A country that started life by being thrown out with no resources and borrowed water had made its people around 165 times richer. But here is the part the highlight reel always leaves out. None of this came by magic, and none of it came for free. Singapore's rise was bought with real and lasting trade-offs that its own people still argue about today. The very same government that planned the economy so brilliantly also kept tight control over politics, the courts, and the press. Its growth has leaned heavily on huge numbers of low-paid foreign workers, who make up a large share of the labor force but share little of the wealth they help create. And one of the richest cities on earth is also one of the most expensive places anyone can try to live, with genuine worries about inequality. The lesson is not that Singapore discovered a cheat code. It made a long series of deliberate, sometimes uncomfortable choices, and it paid the price each one carried. So what truly turned almost nothing into one of the richest places on earth? Not any single thing, and certainly not one heroic individual, no matter how the legends are told. It was a stack of choices that each made the others work. A position astride the world's busiest trade route, doors thrown wide open to foreign industry when other countries slammed theirs shut, a near-fanatical investment in education, and stable, low-corruption institutions that made every other promise believable. Pull out any one of those pieces and the whole story very likely collapses. Economists still argue over how much of it was brilliant strategy and how much was simply luck and good timing. The most honest answer is that it was a great deal of both. So what can the rest of us actually take from it? Singapore's story is not a tidy promise that any small country can copy the recipe and become wealthy. Its geography and its timing helped in ways that simply cannot be ordered up on demand. But it stands as powerful proof that a nation's resources are not its destiny. A place with absolutely nothing in the ground took its location, its openness, and above all its people, and deliberately turned them into enormous wealth inside a single lifetime. Maybe that is the real lesson here. Sometimes the most valuable thing a country can own is not buried somewhere under its soil. It is simply the set of choices it is brave enough to make.